Okay, in this video we're going to talk about increment and decrement operators. So let's declare two integers, maybe int x and int y. Okay, so if I say x equals 5, right, and then I print out x, right, x plus x, x plus x. All right, so this is going to display the value of x, and if I run this, clearly by this point in watching my tutorials, you should know that x is going to be 5, right? So x comes out as 5. Okay, now increment and decrement operators are plus plus and minus minus, right? They're the common ones, right? So how do I use these, right? So let's say I wanted to increment x by 1. There's shorthand notation for that, and I could say x plus plus. And x plus plus is the same as, right, if I were going to comment this, which you would not do in your code, it's the same as me writing x equals x plus 1, right? That's the exact same thing. It increments x by 1. These plus plus and minus minus can only be used to increment by 1, right? Okay, we can do it other ways to shorthand notation to increment by 2, right? So I could have written this as x equals x plus 1. I could have also written it as x plus equals 1, right? Which is x equals x plus 1. They're all the same, right? So if I ran the code now and then I printed out x, after I incremented by 1, x should now be 6, right? So if I run this code, right, first x is 5, then x is 6. Now, increment and decrement operators can be placed before or after the variable. So for instance, here, I could have put plus x. Now, in the case when it's all alone on a line, there's no difference. So if I ran this code now, right, x is 6, and you're probably saying, well, then why can you put it in either place? And we'll talk about that in a second. So first that's increment, and then to decrement I can use minus minus, right? So this is the same as me writing x equals x minus 1, right? X equals x minus 1. It's subtracting 1 from x. So now x should start out at 5, and then x should be oh, I didn't want to do that, right? Okay, hold on, let me get back here, edit, undo, edit, undo. Okay, so now x should be 5 here, and then when I subtract 1, x should be 4. So let's run this code, right? I'll run this code, and x is 5, and then x is 4. And again, I could have had this before the x, and again, if it's on the same line, it's not going to be any different. This is going to print out 4 again, right? So let's see what the true difference is when I put it before and after, right? Because so far we didn't see any difference. Here's the difference. When we increment in this manner, it's going to increment the value at a different time than if I put the plus plus before it like that. Okay, now when it's on the same line, it doesn't have any value. So let's try to make this a little more useful. So now let's say I said y equals x, right? And I printed out the value of y, right? If I say y equals x, then y is going to be, and I want to print out y here. Y is also going to be 5, right? So let's run this just to prove, right? Okay, so y is also 5. Now, let's say I said y equals x plus plus. What would you expect to happen, right? So here's what happens, and then we'll explain why. Y is 5, but now you're saying, but I incremented x. Why didn't it increment it to 6 and then store it into y? Here's the difference. If I put y equals plus plus x and run it, now y is 6, and that's the whole difference, right? When you put the plus plus in front of the variable, it increments the value before that variable is used. So in this case, an assignment statement says, compute what's on the right and then store that into y, right? So the plus plus in front of the x happens before I take the value of x, right? So I incremented x and got 6, and then I took the value of x and put it into y. That's why y equals 6. Now when I have x plus plus, it increments after it uses the value of x. So in this case, what happens, right, is it takes the value of x, which is 5, and assigns it to y, and then it increments the value of x. So in this case, it printed out y was 5, right? Y is 5. However, if right after this, I do nothing else, but I print out the value of y of x again, x will have been incremented, right? X is actually 6 because it incremented it after it used the value and stored it into y. So that's the difference between plus plus after it and plus plus before it. Now the same applies to minus minus, right? Or decrement. So in this case, I'm going to decrement after I use it. So y is still going to have the same value of x, but then after that, x would be 4. So if I run this code, right, x is 5, y is 5, but after I assigned the 5 to y, I decremented x. That's why when I print out this line, x is 4. If I wanted it to decrement before I use it, I would have to put it before that, right? And now it's going to decrement the value of x first to 4, assign that to y and print it out, and then x still has that value of 4. So auto increment and decrement by 1 is performed in that manner. Now the whole difference is when you have it alone on a line, it doesn't matter whether you do it before or after, because on that line it's going to get incremented by 1. So after that line it's going to be 1. So you're going to see it x plus plus when it's standalone. You're always going to see it written that way, even though plus plus x would have the same value. But most programmers are going to write x plus plus when it's alone on a line. But you have to understand the difference when it's not all alone on a line, what's happening with the increment and decrement and when it is actually happening.